There is something people don't often say out loud, but many feel every single day. That lingering sense that everything is going to go wrong, even when things seem fine. That quiet hunch whispering that life will sooner or later strike you again. So you brace yourself, you tense up, you sabotage yourself. You can't enjoy anything because your mind has already decided it's all fleeting, that everything will fall apart. And even if nothing's wrong yet, you're already living in the imagined disaster. That's what constant pessimism is. A mental habit so deeply rooted that you don't even question it. You just live with it, like a dark cloud over your head that won't leave, even if the sun shines on everyone else. It doesn't matter how many times people tell you everything will be okay. You've already decided it won't, because in your experience, things don't turn out well. Not for you, not entirely. And you convince yourself it's wiser not to get your hopes up, not to expect anything, not to trust anyone. That way at least it won't hurt as much when things break. But what if I told you that this way of thinking isn't wisdom, but self-destruction disguised as caution? Most people don't realize how much damage a repeated thought can cause, a sentence repeated in your mind that becomes a truth. It won't work. I'll probably fail. I don't deserve it. The same thing always happens to me. These aren't facts, they're judgments, opinions you turned into certainties, and without even realizing it, you made them the compass of your life. You make decisions based on fear. You isolate yourself as a form of protection. You say you're being realistic, but deep down, you've surrendered. You've made pessimism your shield, without noticing that it also became your cage. And here's the most painful part. That constant pessimism often began as a way to protect yourself. It didn't come from malice or drama. It came from a broken heart, from a promise that wasn't kept, from an effort that went unrecognized, from a childhood where everything was unstable, or from a relationship that taught you it was naive to expect good things. So instead of being shattered again, you decided to expect the hit. You told yourself, I better prepare for the worst. But preparing your mind for the worst, day after day, year after year, robs you of something far more valuable than hope. It robs you of peace, of presence, of openness. It turns you into an emotional survivor, not someone who actually lives. You react instead of create. You shut down instead of open up. You doubt instead of trust. And little by little, your world shrinks. You no longer make new friends. You no longer start anything. You no longer enjoy things, because every corner of your mind is filled with alarms that never turn off. That's why you're here. Because deep down, part of you is tired. Tired of living on defense. Tired of expecting the worst, even when the best is right in front of you. Tired of distrusting sincere affection, of sabotaging peace with dark thoughts, of rejecting opportunities because they probably won't last. And you're not alone. Many of us fight that silent battle because pessimism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hides in phrases like, I already knew, why bother, that's not for me. It hides in cynical laughter, in constant skepticism, in the inability to enjoy without guilt. But Stoicism offers a response, a way out. Not a magical one, but a real one. A way of thinking that doesn't deny the harshness of life, but also doesn't surrender to pain as the only outcome. Today, we're not here to promise that everything will be perfect. We're here to remind you that you are not your thoughts, that your mind can be trained, that your past doesn't have to define your emotional state, that there is a way to live with presence, firmness, and serenity, even amid uncertainty. This episode isn't for those looking for fake positivity. It's for those tired of being trapped in their own minds, for those ready to reclaim their power, for those willing to let go of pessimism as their identity. And you know you can do it. That's why you're here. Today we'll begin dismantling that invisible prison, step by step. We'll use the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, not as hollow quotes, but as living tools. We'll prove that you can have dark thoughts and still choose to act with light. But before we move forward, I want to ask you something simple. If you've ever felt that pessimism has become part of who you are, that it limits you, numbs you, steals your life, subscribe now. It may seem like a small gesture, but your subscription helps us reach more people going through the same thing. People who also think there's no way out, who are tired of pretending everything's okay when inside they feel trapped in negativity. And if this content resonates with you, if you feel these words don't just describe your pain, but also your desire to heal, leave a comment. I choose to rebuild myself from within. Because that's what you'll do today. It's not about ignoring reality's hardness, but about stopping the habit of predicting it as a tragedy. It's about learning to interpret events with perspective, to filter your thoughts with temperance, to reclaim your mind's dignity. You're about to begin a deep journey, uncomfortable but transformative. Take a deep breath, because you've already taken the first step. You're here, present, awake, and now we begin. First lesson: don't believe everything you think. Some thoughts feel like absolute truths. They come with such force, with such familiarity, that it's almost impossible not to believe them. I'm not good at this. Everything goes wrong for me. I already know how this story ends. You repeat them silently while no one listens, like the echo of an undeniable truth that has followed you for years. These thoughts don't scream, but they drill deep. And the most dangerous part is that over time, they no longer feel like thoughts. They feel like identity. That's how constant pessimism works. Not like a sudden storm, but like a drizzle that slowly soaks the soul. You don't notice it at first. It starts with small doubts. Then you get used to expecting the worst. Eventually it seems reasonable to imagine everything could fail, and before you know it, you're already living inside an internal narrative where every decision feels risky, every relationship feels fragile, and every new attempt seems like a waste of time. But Stoicism throws you a truth that breaks that chain. Don't believe everything you think. Because thinking isn't the same as knowing. Because intense emotion doesn't equal truth. Because a repeated assumption doesn't become certainty just by habit. And above all, because an untrained mind tends to see shadows even on sunny days. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with brutal clarity. If something external causes you pain, it's not the thing itself that hurts, but your judgment about it. And that you have the power to revoke. That's the key. You are not a slave to your thoughts. You're not obligated to believe every interpretation that arises in your mind. You can pause, you can question, you can observe your inner dialogue as if you were listening to someone else's story. And then something liberating happens. You reclaim control. Picture this. Someone is walking through the forest and hears a crack in the trees. Their mind says, "It's a puma. I'm in danger." Their heart races. Their body tenses. They start to run before knowing what's really happening. But looking more closely, they realize it was just a falling branch. Who created the fear, the noise, the branch? No, it was the interpretation. The mind turned a stimulus into a threat. That's what we do every day without realizing it. Every time you think this is going to end badly, you're hearing branches crack and reacting as if they were attacks. And the tragedy is that many times by fleeing, you abandon real chances to grow, to love, to move forward, not because the threat was real, but because you believed it without question. Epictetus put it this way: what troubles people is not things themselves, but their opinions about them. That opinion, that interpretation, that mental filter, that's where pessimism lives. And like any filter, it can be changed. This isn't about becoming naive or pretending everything's fine. The Stoic doesn't live in an optimistic bubble. They live in reality, but they learn to distinguish between the event and the story the mind tells about the event. That changes everything. For example, you send a message to someone important and they don't reply. The fact is, they didn't reply. The pessimistic mind says, they don't care about me. They're ignoring me. This always happens. But a Stoic pauses the judgment. They say to themselves, They didn't reply, and I don't know why. I don't have all the facts. I won't waste my energy on assumptions. That difference looks small on the outside, but it's huge inside, because by refusing to feed negative judgment, you break the cycle of anxiety, frustration, and unnecessary pain. Another scenario: you're about to start a new project and fear arises. Your mind throws out a familiar voice. This is going to fail. But now you respond with awareness. That's a thought, not a fact. I hear it, but I don't obey it. And you move forward, and if something still goes wrong, at least it won't be because you sabotaged yourself. It will be because you tried. This is a daily training, because the pessimistic mind reacts fast. It's like a wild horse charging toward the cliff with every dark thought, but you can be the rider who takes the reins. Not to suppress what you think, but to observe without identifying, to choose what to feed and what to release. Seneca explained it simply: no one can harm you without your consent, and that consent isn't just toward others, it's also toward your own thoughts. When you accept as truth an idea that weakens you, you're giving away your power. But if instead of reacting you breathe and observe, you regain inner sovereignty. So, how do you apply this in practice? When a pessimistic thought arises, pause and ask yourself: 1. Is this a fact or an interpretation? 2. Do I have real evidence for this thought? 3. Does this thought strengthen or weaken me? 4. What would someone with courage think in this same situation? This simple exercise can change your day, because every unchallenged thought is a seed of suffering, but every observed thought becomes a door to freedom. And this is where Stoicism doesn't just teach you to think better. It teaches you to live better, because if you learn to distrust automatic pessimism, you can start building a life not ruled by fear, a life more lucid, more courageous, more yours. The pessimist lives as if everything is already written. The Stoic lives as if everything can be interpreted with virtue. Don't believe everything you think. Believe in your ability to discern. Believe in your power to choose the story you tell yourself. Believe in the possibility of seeing life without the dark lenses of habit. Because sometimes the first step to overcoming pessimism is daring not to believe its voice. Second lesson: facts are neutral. You decide their value. There are days when everything seems to be working against you. You lose an opportunity, someone lets you down, plans get cancelled, something you valued breaks, or you simply feel like the world has turned a little grayer. And without realizing it, you start filling that space with thoughts like, why me? Everything goes wrong for me. Nothing makes sense. It's almost automatic. The event happens, and you paint it as a tragedy. But what if the event itself isn't good or bad? What if it's just that, an event? What if the real tragedy isn't in what happens, but in what you believe it means? Epictetus said it with a clarity that transcends centuries. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And when you understand this, not just with your mind but with your soul, something unlocks. Because for the first time, you realize you're not a victim of what happens to you, but the author of how you choose to experience it. Your boss speaks to you in a harsh tone. Is that humiliation or just their reaction, which doesn't define your worth? An important meeting gets cancelled. Is that a personal rejection or a simple schedule change you can turn to your advantage? You break your foot and can't train for weeks. Is that a misfortune or a chance to learn to care for your body from a new perspective? It all depends on the judgment you make. And here is where the greatness of Stoic thinking comes in, because it's not about denying reality or forcing yourself to see the world through rose-colored glasses. It's about recognizing your power to give things a different meaning, not to sugarcoat the pain, but to reinterpret it, to elevate it, to use it as fuel instead of letting it drown you. Imagine you have a stone in front of you. You can say, this is an obstacle that stops me. Or you can say, this is a challenge that will make me stronger if I face it. The stone didn't change. Your way of seeing it did. And that changes everything. Seneca explained it like this: "A noble fire burns brighter when fanned by the wind, and that fire is within you, but you'll only discover it when you stop cursing the wind and decide to use it." The problem isn't the facts. Facts don't feel. They don't conspire against you. They have no intention. Facts just are. It's your mind that gives them shape, weight, and direction. And when your thinking is untrained, pessimism takes over. It repeats old stories. It reminds you of all the times you failed. It convinces you that what's happening confirms what you fear, and what was just a simple fact ends up becoming an emotional sentence, a wound that reopens, a test you never wanted. But if you remain true to the Stoic spirit, you choose something else. You choose to face the fact, without filters, without victimhood, without that automatic interpretation you learned through painful experiences. You take emotional distance, you breathe, and you choose. Because yes, you can choose. Choose whether what happened is a sign to give up or a chance to grow. Choose whether what they said is an attack or just an opinion that doesn't define you. Choose whether that mistake makes you useless or wiser. And this isn't just philosophy, it's practice. It's real training. It's strengthening your discernment muscle day by day. Did you fall? Good. What can you learn from the fall? Did someone stop talking to you without explanation? Good. What do you value in a connection? Do you want relationships based on truth or on convenience? Did a project fail? Good. What will you do differently next time? The Stoic doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What can I do with this now?" That's the difference between sinking and growing. That's the difference between automatic pessimism and trained awareness. Because in the end, it's not your falls that define your destiny. It's the story you tell yourself about them. And that story, whether you believe it or not, is entirely yours. No one can step into your mind and force you to interpret something with sadness, anger, or fear. You choose, even when it doesn't seem like it, even when the world is shouting something else. Do you know what Marcus Aurelius did? Every morning, before beginning his day, he reminded himself he would encounter selfishness, betrayal, injustice, and instead of fearing it or taking it personally, he told himself, "They act according to their nature, I will act according to mine." That is power. Not that nothing ever happens to you, but that nothing that happens makes you forget who you've chosen to be. So the next time life throws a hard, uncomfortable, or sad fact at you, don't react like always. Pause. Ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this? Am I magnifying the pain? Am I giving this more value than it really has? Could I view this from a wiser angle? Because maybe you can't change what happened, but you can always change what it means to you. And that's where your freedom begins. The pessimist clings to their interpretation as if it were the only possible one. The Stoic examines it, and if it's not useful, they transform it. Because you already know, facts are neutral. You decide whether to use them as weight or as wings. Living trapped in pessimism doesn't mean you're broken. It simply means your soul is asking for a new way of seeing life. If you're tired of always imagining the worst, subscribing may seem like a small gesture, but for us, it's an act of courage. It helps us keep creating this space for minds seeking light in the midst of noise. Here, you'll learn to think clearly even when fear whispers tragedy. Your hope is not naive, it's strength in progress. Third lesson, train your attention like a guardian. Most people trapped in constant pessimism believe their emotional state is inevitable. They say things like, "I can't help it," "My mind just goes there," or "This is just how I am." But that's not true. What's really happening is that they've allowed their attention, this powerful, precious faculty, to be tossed around like a leaf in the wind. They haven't learned to direct it, govern it, or protect it. And when you don't train your attention, your mind becomes a cage built from dark, catastrophic, repetitive thoughts, a mental prison where every good thing that happens goes unnoticed, while the negative gets amplified as if it were an imminent threat. Has that ever happened to you? You're in the middle of a situation that objectively isn't that bad, but it feels like the world is crumbling. Everything looks blurry, joy is inaccessible, even the beautiful seems fake. As if something terrible is about to happen. That's not the world. That's your attention, trained to focus on what hurts instead of what heals. The Stoics knew this. They knew there's no such thing as inner freedom. If you don't train your mind to choose where your focus goes, because wherever you place your attention, your reality begins to grow. Epictetus said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if all your focus is on what you fear, what's missing and what could go wrong, then your soul begins to wither. And the worst part, you don't even notice it. You think you're seeing things as they are, when in reality you're seeing them through a mind conditioned by fear. It's like wearing dirty glasses and thinking the world itself is blurry. But attention isn't passive. It's not a flashlight that moves on its own. It's a tool, and you can learn to use it skillfully. But first, you must make one firm decision. Stop being a victim of your focus. Imagine you're in a room with many windows. From some, you see beautiful landscapes. From others, chaos, danger, and darkness. If you only look through the foggiest windows, you'll live in anxiety, even though the rest of the view is full of light. That's what the pessimistic mind does. It gets used to peering through the windows of fear. That's why you need to act like a true guardian. Don't let just anything through. A city's gatekeeper doesn't let anyone in. They filter, evaluate, protect. That's what you must do with your thoughts. When a negative, automatic, destructive thought appears, don't let it in just because it's familiar. Ask yourself, does this strengthen or weaken me? Does this thought bring me closer to peace or drag me toward chaos? Does it have real evidence, or is it just a disguised assumption? And if the answer is that it harms you, don't feed it, don't fight it, just observe it, and let it pass. Marcus Aurelius put it clearly. The soul becomes colored by the thoughts it entertains. Don't let your soul be painted black every day because you weren't guarding your mental gates. Of course, this takes practice. You won't master it overnight. Your mind is used to walking certain roads, but every time you choose a different thought, no matter how small, you begin paving a new one. And with time, that new road becomes your way of living. Listen, this isn't about becoming a positive person in the superficial sense. It's not about denying hardship, pain, or difficulty. It's about not getting stuck there. About having the ability to see beyond, to know that even in darkness there is a way out, and that the way out begins with your attention. A Stoic doesn't leave their mind unguarded. They treat it like a temple, because they know that whatever enters becomes their experience. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. For one day, observe where your mind goes. Do it without judgment. Just observe. Does your attention automatically go to what's missing, what could go wrong, what you fear? Then now you understand why you feel the way you do. Because you're feeding the wrong fire. But if you start redirecting your attention, even gradually, you'll notice a shift. The air feels cleaner. Your mind feels lighter. You stop being a victim of what happens and start being the author of what you choose to see. Do you realize the power in that? The pessimist lives in reaction. The Stoic chooses where to look, and that changes everything. So today, I'll leave you with a simple but powerful phrase. I am not what I think. I am what I choose to feed. Let your attention become an act of self-respect. Don't feed thoughts that dim your light. Don't abandon yourself to the habit of only seeing the worst. Don't let your mind become your enemy. Be its master. Train it and become the guardian of your serenity. Fourth lesson, adversity is not your enemy. It's your teacher. The pessimist sees every difficulty as a sign of incoming disaster. They spot problems even before they exist, and when they do appear, they magnify them until they seem like unbeatable monsters. They live in constant anticipation of the next blow, resisting it, resenting it, as if life owed them a smooth and straight path. But a Stoic doesn't think like that. A Stoic doesn't expect life to be easy. They expect it to be real, and they know that reality includes hardship, loss, setbacks, injustice, pain. They know that living is not a contract with comfort, but a dance with the unpredictable. And they accept it, not with resignation, but with respect. Seneca said it bluntly, "The man who fears suffering is already suffering what he fears." And that is exactly what happens to the pessimist. They suffer in advance. They destroy themselves with the expectation that everything will go wrong, and when something finally does, they take it as proof of their personal curse. But what if the mistake lies in the way you look at things, not in the things themselves? What if the problem isn't the difficulty itself, but how you interpret it? That's the heart of this lesson, learning to see challenges as training, not punishment, as part of the path, not a block in it, as an opportunity for strength, not a sign that something is broken within you. Imagine for a moment that every tough situation in your life, every disappointment, every heartbreak, every injustice has come not to destroy you, but to shape you. Would that change the way you face them? What if you understood that what hurts you today might be the very thing that grants you wisdom tomorrow? Marcus Aurelius saw it that way. Amid war, loss, betrayal, and illness, he wrote in his meditations, "Fire transforms everything it touches into flame. Likewise, a strong soul turns every trial into virtue." There is no better phrase to capture this lesson, because fire, like life, burns without asking permission. But it also reveals what is resilient. Your soul can be a faint spark or a powerful flame, and that depends on how you choose to interpret what you live. The pessimist breaks with every blow. The Stoic is forged. One curses the wind, the other uses it to strengthen their roots. Did you know that trees grown in perfect greenhouses without wind, cold, or storms develop weak roots? They appear beautiful, but at the first strong gust of wind, they fall. In contrast, trees exposed to harsh weather, wind, and change grow deep roots, roots that anchor them, roots that are invisible, but make all the difference. That's how your character works. If all you do is try to avoid difficulty, you'll never grow roots. But if you learn to see each trial as an uncomfortable teacher, your soul will grow steady. Seneca also wrote something powerful. Don't complain about difficulties. Without them, you wouldn't know yourself. And it's true, because it's not in calm where you discover your true strength, but in the storm. Anyone can be kind when everything is going well. Anyone can stand firm when the road is flat. But who are you when nothing goes as planned? Who are you when everything seems to fall apart? That's when true virtue is measured. That's when philosophy stops being theory and becomes action. And here's something important. This doesn't mean you must love pain. It's not about romanticizing suffering. It's about understanding that hardship doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to show you who you are. It comes to teach you to let go of what no longer serves you. It comes to make space for a stronger version of yourself. But if you resist it, if you fight reality, if you fall into victimhood, if you curse every difficulty, you will sink. And that's understandable, because no one ever taught us this. Since we were kids, we were told the ideal life was one where everything goes right. That mistakes are shameful. That pain means failure. But the Stoics saw it the other way around. To them, adversity was not the enemy. It was a traveling companion, the uncomfortable part of the process that strengthens the soul, and that's why they didn't run from it. When Marcus Aurelius felt overwhelmed, he didn't beg for the world to change. He focused on how to respond with virtue. That's what a wise person does. They don't fear dark days because they know that's exactly when their light can shine brightest. So the next time something difficult happens in your life, pause before reacting the way you always do. Breathe, observe, and ask yourself, what if this is here for me too? What if I can grow from this place? What if this hardship is a kind of mirror showing me what I still need to work on? Maybe it won't be easy, but you are not fragile. You have the power to turn this trial into clarity. And if you do, Pessimism will lose its grip, because you'll no longer live as if the world is against you. You'll know that even the hardest things can refine your soul. You don't get to choose adversity, but you always get to choose what you do with it. And in that small space between pain and your reaction lies your freedom. Fifth lesson: live the moment as if it were enough. Pessimism feeds on the future. Not the real future, but the one your mind projects through fear. This won't last. Something bad is bound to happen. The blow is coming. It always does. Do those phrases sound familiar? Maybe you don't say them out loud, but you whisper them to yourself every single day. And without realizing it, they become a filter that distorts your entire perception. A kind of dark lens that casts a shadow even on your good moments. Because once pessimism takes root, nothing feels like enough. You question everything, doubt everything, anticipate everything with fear. You can't enjoy what is because your mind is trapped in the what-ifs. What if it ends? What if I'm betrayed? What if I get sick? What if I fail? The present gets hijacked by a future that doesn't even exist yet. But Stoicism offers you a different way of seeing, a more radical one. A more challenging one. Live as if this moment were all you had, because in truth it is. Marcus Aurelius put it powerfully. Do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you must, with the same reason you use now for the present. Do you see it? The problem isn't what might happen. The problem is that you're using your imagination to sabotage your peace. You're stealing your own calm in advance. Imagine this. You're walking through a peaceful forest. There's sunlight, stillness. You breathe deeply. But then your mind whispers, "Careful, there could be a snake ahead." And suddenly you tense. You panic. You no longer see the forest. You only see the imagined danger. And the saddest part, that snake might never appear, but you already lived the fear. You already carried the anxiety. You already lost your peace over something that didn't exist. That's what pessimism does to your life. Here's the Stoic shift. Come back to this moment, this one, where you are now, where you're breathing, where there's no snake, where there's no tragedy, where maybe, just maybe, you could be okay if you let yourself. Is it easy? Number, especially if your mind has spent years practicing the opposite. But it's possible, and it begins with a decision. Don't let your mind wander into the future without your permission. Each time you notice yourself anticipating something bad, pause and ask yourself, is that happening right now? Can I be okay with what is right now? Can I find something to be grateful for in this very moment? Seneca said, "While you're waiting to live, life is passing by." And how right he was. Because the pessimist is always waiting for the next blow, and while they wait, life slips through their fingers. They don't laugh, they don't trust, they don't enjoy. They stay on high alert, always expecting suffering as inevitable. But it's not, at least not in this second, and this second is all you can truly inhabit. Here, there are no betrayals. Here there are no losses. Here there is only you and your capacity to be present. You know what's hardest for a pessimistic soul? Accepting that things might actually be okay. Yes, it sounds strange, but it's real. Many people have spent so long expecting things to go wrong. They feel guilty when everything goes right, as if they don't deserve it, as if enjoying life is somehow reckless. But it's not. It's an act of courage. To enjoy the present, even with an uncertain future, is an act of defiance. It's looking life in the eyes and saying, I don't know what tomorrow holds, but today I'm grateful for what I have. And that breaks the cycle of pessimism, because it doesn't deny it. It doesn't erase it, but it disarms it. It takes away its fuel. Pessimism needs projections. It needs imagined scenarios. It thrives by feeding your fears with stories that haven't even happened. But if you inhabit your now with attention, gratitude, and presence, you take away its power. Not because you don't have problems, but because you stop creating more with your mind. And that is a profoundly Stoic decision. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do what needs to be done now, the rest is smoke." So what needs to be done today? Being present with someone you love, doing your work with dignity, breathing deeply as you walk, giving thanks for a meal, a conversation, a ray of sunlight. Do that and repeat it every day until your soul understands that the present is more than enough. Because once you truly inhabit it, you'll realize many of your fears weren't real. Many of your troubles were just mental mirages. And you don't need to control the future to be at peace. You just need to be here, whole, aware, grateful. That is the true rebellion of the pessimist, to return to the now and discover that they are not missing as much as they thought. Sixth lesson, don't confuse prudence with fatalism. Being cautious doesn't mean living in fear, but for many that line has become blurred. You've learned to expect the worst, to believe that if you anticipate catastrophe, it won't hurt as much, that if you prepare for rejection, it won't sting when it happens, that if you assume everything will go wrong, you might save yourself the disappointment. But in truth, all you're doing is living in constant disappointment, even before anything happens. That's not prudence. That's fatalism, and it doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. Fatalism is just pessimism dressed up as maturity. It presents itself as wisdom, but at its core, it's a shield. A shield against hope, against longing, against the possibility that something might actually go well. And the Stoics knew how to tell the difference. For them, prudence meant preparing your inner self, not mentally rehearsing every possible tragedy. It meant strengthening your character, not destroying your joy. It meant accepting that the worst could happen, but not living as if it always will. Seneca said it plainly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And the worst part isn't just the suffering, it's the exhaustion. Because living under the constant expectation of failure drains you, weakens you, blinds you to the beautiful, the simple, the possible. Fatalism is a subtle trap. It tells you you're strong because you've stopped expecting anything to improve, that you're prepared because you don't allow yourself to hope, that you're realistic because you expect nothing. But that's not strength, it's resignation, and resignation doesn't save you, it withers you. A prudent person knows that life can change in an instant, and still doesn't sour their days before it does. A fatalist believes pain is inevitable, loss is certain, and joy is a lie, and so they shut themselves off, in their mind, in their armor, in their skepticism. And you know what ends up happening? They miss out on all the good they could have lived, all because they were trying to avoid a pain that might never arrive. That's not living. That's surviving without a soul. Stoicism offers you another path, a path of strength, not of defeat, a path where you prepare inwardly, not from fear, but from wisdom, where you acknowledge things might go wrong, but you don't assume they will, where you don't need to imagine disaster just to survive it. Epictetus explained it like this: it's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. You get to decide whether something that hasn't happened yet gets to ruin your peace today. You get to decide whether that anticipation serves you or destroys you. Here's the key. Being prudent means fortifying your inner self to face what may come. Being fatalistic means surrendering to what hasn't even happened. The prudent walks steady, open to uncertainty. The fatalist walks hunched over, bracing for impact. The prudent train themselves not to break. The fatalist lives already broken. Do you see the difference? Fatalism tells you everything will go wrong, so don't get your hopes up. People always fail you, so don't trust. Nothing changes, so don't expect anything. And that might feel like it protects you, but in truth, it isolates you. It numbs you. It robs you of fully living. Seneca wrote with brutal clarity, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Think about it. How many times have you lived through imagined pain that never came? How many times have you held back for fear of being hurt? How many opportunities have you missed because you focused on what could go wrong? That's the cost of fatalism. It's not maturity. It's a mental prison. True prudence, stoic prudence, doesn't deny pain. It simply refuses to suffer it ahead of time. The prudent say, if it happens, I'll deal with it. I don't need to suffer now. My strength doesn't lie in avoiding the blow, but in withstanding it. And that is true freedom, because living with fatalism is living chained, but living with prudence is living with inner liberty. A liberty that doesn't depend on everything going perfectly, but on you being ready for whatever comes. So I ask you, do you really want to keep living each day like it's a tragedy waiting to happen? Or are you ready to reclaim your peace without resisting what life may bring? You can prepare without obsessing. You can acknowledge risk without living in panic. You can accept uncertainty without turning it into a death sentence. That's the Stoic invitation, and your chance to heal the habit of pessimism. Live with clarity, not with fear. With awareness, not paranoia. With composure, not surrender. Because your soul was built to endure, but also to enjoy. And if you live every moment like a prelude to disaster, you'll never discover the peace that already exists within you. You weren't made to anticipate sorrow. You were made to walk through life with virtue. And that is more than enough. If you've made it this far, it means you're ready to stop living trapped in thoughts that drain you. Subscribe and comment, "My mind deserves peace," to affirm your commitment to a clearer, stronger, and more conscious life. This is only the first step toward an existence where your thoughts are no longer enemies, but allies. By the 9th lesson, you'll uncover a powerful truth that could transform your inner dialogue. Don't miss it. It might be the shift your soul has been waiting for. Let's keep going. 7th lesson, your story doesn't have to repeat itself. There's a quiet phrase many people carry within. They don't say it aloud, but they feel it every time they get excited about something. Why bother trying if I already know how it ends? It's the echo of the past, of what failed, of what hurt, of what you once believed would be different and wasn't. And without realizing it, that begins to define you. You're no longer just yourself. You're the one who always gets left behind. You're the one who always ruins their chances. You're the one who always chooses wrong. You're the one who doesn't know how to move forward. And that's where the trap begins, because what was once a single event now becomes an identity, a mental script that repeats itself in every new experience. It doesn't matter if the situation is different. It doesn't matter if you've changed. The script takes over, and you become its obedient actor. But Stoicism holds a more radical truth. You are not condemned to repeat your story, because what happened doesn't define who you are. It defines what you endured, what you learned, and what you can transform if you choose to act with virtue. Epictetus taught that the past exists only in your mind, that the only real thing is the present, and that this moment, right here, right now, is your true opportunity to exercise freedom. Were you let down before? That was before. Did you make mistakes? They already happened. Did you fall, get sabotaged, lose your way? It doesn't matter how many times. You're here, alive, aware, and that's more powerful than you realize. But to break the cycle of pessimism, there's something you must do. Break your loyalty to pain. Yes, loyalty, because often you remain faithful to your wound, because it's part of you, because you've grown used to it, because it gives you an excuse not to take risks, because if you let go of that story, you don't know who you'll be without it, and that's scary. But you need to let go. You need to stop being the main character of a tragedy that's already over. Because if you don't, the thing you fear the most, repeating the story, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Each morning when you rise, say, 'Today I have the opportunity to act as a rational being.'" He didn't say, "Today I will act as who I was yesterday." Nor, "Today I'll repeat what others did to me." He said, opportunity. And that's the key word, opportunity. The opportunity not to respond the way you always have, not to sabotage yourself like before, not to believe everything your wounded mind tells you. Yes, maybe in the past you gave yourself away. You stayed silent, you settled, you waited for what never came, and when it did come, it hurt. But that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And today you can use that humanity to change, because experience alone doesn't transform. What transforms is what you do with it. The pessimist collects painful memories to prove the world never changes. The Stoic examines them to grow wiser, to stop repeating what no longer serves, to make new decisions with inner clarity. And here's something you might not want to hear. Not everything will be resolved right away. But you don't need to fix everything to begin changing. You only need one act, one different word, one new response. That already breaks the pattern. That already begins a new story. But you have to stay alert, because your mind will try to drag you back into the past. It'll say, don't be naive. You already know how this ends. Remember how it went last time. And if you're not grounded, you'll believe it. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. And the familiar, even when it hurts, feels comforting. That's why you must train your awareness. Remind yourself every day that your story is not yet written, that you are not a consequence, but a cause, and that your character is shaped by present actions, not by past wounds. Seneca said it bluntly, there is no favorable wind for the one who doesn't know where they're going. If you keep sailing with your pain as your compass, you'll only arrive at more pain. But if you chart a new course, one that doesn't deny the past, but doesn't glorify it either, then the wind returns, then direction returns, then there is destiny. Because destiny isn't what happened to you, it's what you do with what happened to you. And you, are you willing to write something new? Or are you going to keep rereading the same story every day? If you've come this far, you already have your answer. Remember, you are not your mistake. You are not your disappointment. You are not the broken version of yourself you once were. You are the one who chooses. And today you can choose with more strength, with more awareness, with more courage. Break the chain, break the story, and begin walking toward the place you've never been. Not because you couldn't before, but because now you know you can. That's what it means to defeat pessimism. That's what it means to live with a Stoic soul. 8th lesson, watch the language you use with yourself. Pessimism doesn't always begin with great tragedies. Sometimes it's born from small phrases, from words you repeat without noticing, from those inner dialogues that slip out while you brush your teeth, while you walk alone, while no one else is listening. I'm no good at this. This always happens to me. I'm probably going to fail again. What's the point in trying? They don't sound severe, but they repeat so often that they become part of you, and what is repeated becomes identity. That's the true poison of pessimism, not the events that happen outside, but the words you allow inside. Because the way you speak to yourself defines how you see yourself, and how you see yourself defines everything you do or don't do. It's not magic, it's awareness. Marcus Aurelius, every morning, would write to himself with phrases of firmness, reminding himself that he could choose his attitude, his thoughts, his actions. Not because he was surrounded by peace, but precisely because he lived amid chaos. He knew that if he didn't train his mind would drag him. And he knew that if he didn't care for his internal language, he'd end up speaking the language of fear, frustration, and resentment. You know it too, but you forget, because you're so used to speaking harshly to yourself that you don't even notice it anymore. You believe that's just how you are, that's just how you think, that it's normal to have an inner voice that sabotages you. But it's not normal, it's learned. And everything learned can be unlearned. Stoicism tells you, don't believe everything your mind says, especially when it speaks with cruelty. Epictetus taught that we should examine ourselves as if we were a friend we wanted to help. Would you tell your best friend they're worthless? Would you repeat to them that they're going to fail again? Would you make them feel like trying is pointless? Then why do you do it to yourself? Because at some point in your life, you learned that being hard on yourself was necessary. That unless you pushed yourself with cruelty, you wouldn't improve. That if you spoke to yourself with compassion, you'd grow weak. But that's not strength. That's inner violence disguised as discipline. True growth doesn't come from wounding yourself with words. It comes from speaking to yourself with truth and firmness. It's one thing to be aware of your mistakes. It's another to treat yourself as the mistake. And that's the Stoic shift. The wise person corrects themselves without destroying themselves. Seneca said, "There is no greater madness than to despise oneself." And yet, we do it all the time. We despise ourselves with diminutives. I'm kind of dumb, a bit useless, sometimes a disaster. We despise ourselves with absolutes. Nothing ever goes right for me. I always mess it up. No one values me. And just like that, unintentionally, we reinforce the dark vision we hold of ourselves. We convince ourselves that everything will go wrong, because we're prophesying it with every word. But you can stop that. You can start talking to yourself differently. And it's not about using empty phrases of optimism. You don't need to repeat, "everything's fine," when clearly it's not. You don't need to fake joy when you're in mourning. What you need is to speak to yourself as a rational and steady being would, as a Stoic soul would. You can tell yourself, "This is hard, but not impossible. I fell, but I can still get up. I don't know if it'll work, but I'll try with clarity. I'm learning, not failing." That kind of language doesn't deny reality. It reframes it in a way that strengthens you instead of sinking you. Because every word you choose is another brick in the construction of your character. And if you only build with complaints, laments, and fears, don't be surprised when your inner world collapses with the slightest wind. Now, this doesn't change overnight. You'll slip, you'll speak harshly to yourself again. But each time you notice it, stop, breathe, and correct it. You can even say aloud, "I don't talk to myself that way anymore." And replace that phrase with one that restores your dignity. Do it as an act of rebellion against your own saboteur, as a ritual of self-care, as a way to reclaim power over your mind. Because if Stoicism teaches anything, it's that no one can dominate your soul unless you allow it. And your soul begins to be free when you choose the words you treat it with. Think about this. Every time you speak to yourself with disdain, you're reinforcing the vision that pessimism has of you. But every time you speak to yourself with firmness and respect, you're planting a new way of living inside yourself. You decide which seed to water. And yes, the environment influences you. Others have spoken harshly to you too. Maybe they told you that you couldn't, that you weren't good enough, that you didn't matter, and you believed it. Because when you're a child or wounded, you believe what you're told, even when it isn't true. But now you're an adult, and you can choose not to repeat that script. You can end that chain of inner mistreatment. You can speak to yourself the way no one ever did. With firm love, with true respect, with clear direction, not to avoid the falls, but so that when you do fall, your inner voice isn't the one kicking you while you're down. It's the one reaching out a hand. That's how the change begins. Not with grand victories, but with small phrases, with one new word each day, with a more human tone when you talk to yourself, with fewer insults and more patience. Because in the end, the thing you hear most in life isn't what others say to you. It's what you say to yourself when you're alone. Make that voice your ally. Make it stoic. Make it strong. Make it worthy. And you'll see how, little by little, pessimism is left without a language, because you no longer speak its tongue. If this insight is helping you face your constant pessimism and regain clarity, follow us and become part of this refuge where we train the mind to live with strength, calm, and purpose. Here we don't feed fear, we cultivate courage. There's a truth that isn't said enough. Often it's not your mind that's broken. It's your environment that's polluted. You might be doing everything you can to improve, to stay strong, to change your mindset. But if you're surrounded by people anchored in fear, drama, or constant complaining, it's only a matter of time before that darkness spills onto you. The mind is shaped by repetition, and what repeats the most doesn't always come from within. It comes from what you hear, from what you consume, from the conversations you hold, the messages you receive, the bonds you cling to. You cannot aim for a firm mind while surrounding yourself with minds that celebrate chaos. Pessimism is contagious, and the most dangerous part is that it doesn't arrive as a direct threat. It comes disguised as realism, as sarcastic humor, as well-meaning opinions that slowly clip your wings without you noticing. Phrases like, "What's the point in dreaming? Everything's so messed up. I hope so, but I doubt it. Life's a mess. Better not expect anything. Don't be naive, that never works." At first, they seem harmless. You even laugh. But over time, something in you dims. Your hope shrinks. Your drive dulls. Your vision blurs. And without knowing how, you start seeing the world with the same bitterness you once swore to avoid. This is not an exaggeration, it's emotional reality. Your environment molds your mind, and if you don't consciously choose who surrounds you, you'll be swept away by the current of the loudest voices. That's why Seneca warned with clarity, "The company of the wise strengthens us, even in silence." It's not about seeking perfect people or rejecting those going through a hard time. It's about learning to distinguish between those willing to grow and those who have made pessimism their identity. The first needs company, the second accomplices, and you must decide what you want to be. There are friendships that embrace you in darkness, but gently push you toward the light, and others that invite you to settle in the shadows, because that's where they feel comfortable. There are conversations that make you feel stronger after having them, and others that leave you emotionally drained, as if you just spent an hour fighting your own will to live. Learn to tell the difference, and don't feel guilty for setting boundaries. You're not being selfish, you're being responsible, because you know that if you don't protect your mental energy, no one else will do it for you. And here's something deeper. It's not just about people. Your environment also includes the books you read, the videos you watch, the social media you consume. Have you stopped to examine what kind of content you're feeding yourself every day? Is it inspiring or toxic, reflective or reactive? Does it expand you or shrink you? You often say you're a pessimist, but what's really happening is you've been feeding your mind emotional junk for years. And of course, what goes in stays in. And what stays shapes you. You can't aspire to elevated thoughts if you nourish yourself with cynicism, hatred, or superficiality. You must choose with the same care you use to select your food, because your soul feeds too, and what nourishes it defines your energy, your focus, your emotional state. Start surrounding yourself with strength. And if you don't have strong people around you right now, start with ideas. Look for books that lift your perspective. Look for voices that make you feel capable. Look for teachings that return your power. Fill your space with content that speaks of virtue, temperance, and courage. And if even that feels out of reach, become the source yourself. You can be the beginning. You can be the change you don't yet see. You can be that firm voice that, though trembling inside, chooses not to give up. That falls but doesn't mock its own effort. That fails but never abandons its dignity. Remember this, your environment is not only inherited, it is also built, and you, right now, can begin to build a healthier one more aligned with your desire to evolve, one more coherent with what you know you deserve. That may mean distancing from certain people. It may mean silencing certain groups. It may mean closing certain apps, changing habits, or making others uncomfortable. But if others' discomfort is the price of your inner peace, it's worth paying. Not everyone will understand you, but you're not here to fit in everywhere. You're here to grow, and sometimes growth hurts, because it demands distance, because it demands solitude, because it demands choosing yourself, even when others don't. Surround yourself with strength, not weakness. Do it like someone planting an inner garden. Each decision, each relationship, each word you let in is a seed, and you choose what kind of flowers you want blooming in your mind. Let them not be thorns of doubt, but roots of wisdom. Let them not be shadows of defeat, but sprouts of courage. Let your environment be a reflection of what you aspire to, not an echo of what you fear. And if you must walk alone for a while to find it, walk. You're not running away, you're choosing. And choosing your peace is the most revolutionary act you can make in a world that insists you settle for less. 10th lesson, choose to act even when you feel afraid. The pessimistic mind doesn't just imagine the worst, it anticipates it. It takes it for granted. And worst of all, it uses it as a justification to remain motionless. I won't try because it'll surely go wrong. I won't say it because I'll be rejected. I won't take the risk because I'll lose. This is how pessimism disguises itself as prudence. But in reality, it's a prison without bars, a subtle trap that keeps you locked in the belief that trying is pointless because everything will fail. And the worst part is, it's logical. It comes with arguments, with past memories that seem like irrefutable proof. I tried before and it didn't work. What's the point if no one supports me? I'm not like the ones who succeed. This just isn't for me. But here's something you must understand. Pessimism is not a realistic view of life. It's a way of giving up before you even start. It's fear disguised as wisdom. It's exhaustion turned into an excuse. It's unhealed pain projected onto every decision. And here is where the Stoic message enters. Because Stoicism doesn't deny fear. It doesn't minimize it. It doesn't mock it. It accepts it. It observes it. But most of all, it confronts it. Marcus Aurelius made it clear when he wrote, "Don't waste time arguing what a good man should be one." A simple phrase but powerful, because it tells you that you don't need to have everything figured out, or feel confident, or have the perfect plan to act with virtue. You just need to take a step. One, the next one, even if you can't see the whole path, even if your mind tells you that you'll fall. That step, no matter how small it may seem, is the beginning of your liberation. Because every time you choose to act, you're telling your mind, I no longer believe everything you say. I no longer need things to be perfect to move forward. I'm done waiting for the stars to align before I take action. And that is an act of courage, an act of dignity, an act of self-respect. The Stoic is not the one who feels no fear. It's the one who decides to act in spite of it. It's the one who accepts trembling legs, doubt in the chest, an inner voice whispering, "You can't," and still replies, "I'll do it anyway." Because they know there is no growth without discomfort. Because they understand that action is medicine for the mind. Because they've learned that doing nothing is also a choice. And often it's the worst one. There's a very destructive kind of silence. The silence of those who stay quiet out of habit, of those who don't dare out of fear of failure, of those who let life pass by without participating in it. But you're not here to remain silent. You're here because you know something inside you wants more. There's a voice within that's tired of watching opportunities pass by, of hiding talents, of postponing dreams. You don't need a life without fear. You just need the courage to move a little each day, courage to send that message, to start that project, to leave that environment that drains you, to say yes to what you want and no to what you no longer wish to tolerate. Every brave act builds a new narrative. And little by little, your mind begins to understand that not everything ends in failure, that it doesn't always go wrong, that you are not that broken person you thought you were. You are someone who rebuilds, who chooses, who acts, and if you fall, you rise, and if it hurts, you breathe, and if you doubt, you remember. Action is always more powerful than fear. Pessimism paralyzes. Action liberates. Don't wait for fear to disappear before moving. Move, and you'll see how fear shrinks, because nothing terrifies your insecurities more than seeing you in motion. You don't need to run. Just take the next step. And if your hands tremble, let them tremble. And if your voice shakes, let it shake. But do it anyway. Strong people aren't those who feel no fear. They're the ones who choose not to be ruled by it. The ones who build their peace through movement, who honor their values through action, not theory, who understand that staying still out of fear is also a path, but one that leads to frustration, not freedom. You have that power. It doesn't matter how much you've doubted before, how often anxiety has won, how many chances you've let slip away. Today you can choose to act. Today you can silence pessimism with one decision. Today you can break the pattern of postponing, fearing, and surrendering. Start with something small, a word, a step, a shift, and tomorrow another, and then another, until you realize your life is no longer defined by what you fear, but by what you choose to do despite it. That is the true Stoic victory, the one that doesn't need grand external conquests, but quiet internal acts of courage. And in those acts, in that silent persistence, you rebuild yourself, not as someone who no longer fears, but as someone who has learned to move forward with fear by their side, without letting it choose the path. That's who you are, and that next step is waiting for you. Let me ask you something. Aren't you tired of living in constant expectation of the worst? Of waking up every day with the suspicion that something will go wrong? Of anticipating the fall before even taking the first step? Of looking toward the future like someone stepping into a battle already lost? Of doubting every joy as if it were a trap? Aren't you exhausted from carrying a fear that can't be seen but is present in everything? In your words, in the way you love, in the way you avoid, in the way you see life, as if everything were temporary, fragile, or suspicious. Pessimism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just settles in, like that voice that tells you it's not worth getting your hopes up, that there's no point in trying, that there's no use making an effort because it always ends badly. And you begin to live halfway, to love with caution, to dream without commitment, to live without surrendering. And the worst part is, you don't even notice, because that worldview disguises itself as prudence, as maturity, as realism, but inside it's draining you. Because the real problem is not having negative thoughts, it's believing they're true. It's letting them become the lens through which you see everything. And without realizing it, you no longer see opportunities, only risks. You no longer see paths, only walls. You no longer see beauty, only potential loss. And I tell you this from the soul, that's not the only way to live. Wisdom doesn't belong to those who predict tragedy, but to those who learn not to fear it so much. Strength doesn't come from hardening yourself, but from remaining human without giving up. And this is where Stoicism stops being just another idea and becomes a lifeline, because it teaches you to distinguish between what you control and what you don't. To stop being dragged by every thought that arises, to not react to every impulse, to stop obeying your mind every time it paints a dark scenario. It reminds you that pain is real, but so is your ability to face it, that the world may disappoint you, but your character doesn't have to. Yes, life is fragile, but you're not here to hide from it. You're here to walk through it with virtue. Maybe you grew up around adults who gave up before they even began. Maybe you watched dreams fade before your eyes. Maybe you tasted hope and then failure. Maybe you fell in love with a promise that was never fulfilled. And you learned not to expect anything, not to trust, not to allow yourself joy without guilt. But what you learned isn't always what helps you. And now, as an adult, you can unlearn. You can break that secret pact you made with pessimism. You can stop protecting yourself from everything, and finally start living with everything. I know it's scary. I know failure hurts. I know it's not easy to trust when the world has done its best to wound you. But I also know this: living in fear of pain is a way of dying while still alive. And you're not here for that. You're here to rise again, to feel again, to rebuild, to think clearly, to choose freely, to love with strength, to act with courage, even if fear hasn't left. Because courage is not the absence of pessimism. It's the decision not to surrender to it. And that decision is yours, not the world's, not luck's, not anyone else's, yours. And if something in this session touched a nerve inside you, if something you heard made you feel there's still hope, even if only a flicker, then subscribe, not to boost a number, not out of habit, but as a symbolic act, as a way to say, I'm choosing to see differently, I'm choosing to think differently, I'm choosing to live differently. Because every time you choose to nourish yourself with this kind of content, you take power away from what weakens you. And in a world saturated with noise, superficiality and fear, you decide what feeds your soul. This community doesn't aim to save you, but it does aim to remind you that you're not alone, that you're not strange for feeling the way you do, that you're not broken for thinking what you think, and that there is a way to live beyond pessimism, a life more whole, more courageous, more dignified. And if no one has told you this yet, let me be the first. Yes, you deserve that life. Yes, you can walk toward it. And yes, you're still on time. We're still here. And every Stoic session we share is an invitation to awaken, to strengthen the soul, to rebuild from the depths, without magic formulas, without empty promises, just you, your mind, your will, and the ancient wisdom that guides us. We'll meet again soon. Until then, think clearly, live with virtue, and don't let a shadowed mind stop you from seeing the light you still carry within. Your voice is essential here. Every reflection strengthens and uplifts our community, reflecting the true value of each individual and contributing to our shared Stoic identity. The reflection that receives the most support will be pinned as the banner of this community of Stoic minds. A community that doesn't flee from pain, but walks through it, with courage, with wisdom, with honor. Joining this Stoic community means breaking the chains that limit you and building an inner fortress that no one can tear down. Follow us if you never want to miss another Stoic reflection again. Remember, every decision shapes your character. In the pinned comment, you'll find 2 paths, and each one exists for a reason. There are decisions that seem small, but change everything. If something inside you shifted while listening to this, don't let it pass. Subscribing isn't just a click, it's a decision to no longer live asleep, to walk with awareness, with courage, with purpose. And if you choose to support this space as a member, you're not giving, you're planting. Thanks to you, this flame doesn't go out. Your presence allows us to keep sharing wisdom in a noisy world, building together a community of awakened, grounded, and free souls. We'll see you in our next gathering at Stoicism for Winners, where we'll keep exploring the riches of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now take this chance to expand your understanding with the recommended sessions. Until we meet again, remember, you are the only master of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of being invincible,